Welcome to another episode of Cults and the Culting of America podcast. My name is Scot Loyd. I am here with Daniella Mestyanek Young, otherwise known as the Knitting Cult Lady. And Daniella, no problem sending any unwarranted text about war plans or anything like that. I can't imagine you doing something like that.
Just like 2 trips to war, working in intelligence, never once accidentally added a reporter to like my illegal chat group. And I think the funny part is here. So like the easiest way to explain what happened here is like they butt dialed someone while cheating on their wife. But they're acting like the butt dial is the problem.
I like it. That's a great analogy. And yeah, it rings true. So lots of issues around the world, lots of issues in DC right now. But thank you for explaining how that should have been handled, right?
Yeah. I mean, I can't even like I just feel like this is what we meant. Like when I heard this news, I just started laughing. Like this is what we meant when we said when you put completely unqualified people into these positions. Like I wasn't saying like Hegseth was bad because he is that garbage vet bro that we have all served with, that we all hate to the core of our beings, because like that would have been political. I was saying that like when you put an unqualified person in to run the Department of Defense, this is sort
This
of
is
what
what you get.
happens. But it's
Yeah.
just, I don't know. It's been this weird version for me of like, oh, everyone's going to see that we're in a cult now, right? Like every veteran understands this. Like every single veteran has spent their entire career getting talked to about how their life would be over if they messed up secrets. And now we're just like, we get to watch this on the largest scale and just get to see like, are these men, these gurus at the top, this like culture that's being run right now on like masculinity and ketamine, like how's it gonna go? Which I just leads us well to our guest. I'm excited about the conversation that we're gonna have about leadership today.
Yeah, joining us is Ben John. Ben, welcome to our culty our culty podcast here, where we talk about how even even good motives sometimes end up with unintended consequences. And I think perhaps as you tell your story tonight, we can see that happening with lots of folks who get caught up in this sort of self-help movement. So why don't you introduce yourself and we'll talk about it.
Yeah, well, how you doing, Scott? How you doing, Daniella? My name is Benjamin John, and yeah, so lately I love this topic because it's my passion lately, and it's been a huge part of my life. You know, what I'm focusing on these days is helping people identify what I call misguided mentors and helping them navigate the predatory self-help space. And I see the huge problem in this after I went through it myself for several years and then came out, and then like looking back and reflecting on my own experience, I'm like, wow, I see a huge problem with this, especially this being such an unregulated industry. You know, if nobody's going to do anything about it, I took it upon myself to do things like this, podcasting and talking on my own channel and publicly speaking, writing books about this. Like this is something that if I can't do anything about it, nobody's doing anything about it, the least I could do is get in front of it and at least put information out there to bring awareness and encourage discernment.
I was under the impression that maybe the self-help industry, the cottage industry that has grown up around a lot of this, was sort of seeing a downscale in its popularity. But it seems now it's coming back, and it seems to be what I've observed. And you can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm sure there's all kinds of self-help gurus out there. But what I've observed is that I'm seeing a big movement among young men who are identifying other men, right, to quote unquote mentor them in this idea of masculinity. But we see a lot of tropes, a lot of problems developing around this kind of idea. Am I wrong about my impression that we're seeing kind of a boom now with men and young men?
Well, no, you're not wrong. But the entire coaching and mentorship industry blew up as a whole. But you're right. When we're talking about the whole alpha male, posturing masculinity, that type of movement that's going on lately, that seems to be attracting to some of these young men. And it's starting to blow up. And, it's something I guess I slightly gravitated towards myself, but I don't know. I didn't get deep into that as much as some of these people are. But it's kind of like I've talked about it this way. It's almost like Stockholm syndrome in a way. It's weird. These guys that are all jacked up on steroids will kind of shame you, shame your bank account, shame your who you are, your physique. You got a little extra pounds on you, and then turn around and tell you that they care about you. They're telling you this because they care about you. And then they'll take it a step further and say, nobody in your life is telling you this because they don't care about you. So now they've created this whole atmosphere where they're the only one that cares about them in their life. And they just put this huge amount of status just by doing that one thing and framing it that way. But yeah, you're right. There's a target on a lot of young men, unfortunately. And that's just one segment and like one sector of the unethical self-help space.
And, this is such a cult leader tactic, by the way. A couple things that you said there. One, which is weaponizing the discontent, right? Which is just, I say cults are great at that. Like I have paid $13,000 to a cult guru who was absolutely scamming me, right? Just like upfront when I should have known better, right? And it's such a cult leader tactic to both shame you. I remember this woman was like, "Oh, so you're not a strong woman. You don't actually have the money to put into this without asking a man for help, and like for permission." And she just like zeroed in on the exact thing that was going to get me to be like, "Oh no, I can do this," right? Both like, I need you, but also you're belittling me at the same time.
Yeah. So that's calculated mental manipulation that was going on there. It sounds like she knew what she was doing.
Yeah.
Ben, tell us a little bit about your story and your background and how you started seeing some of the problems in these particular groups.
Yeah. How can I fast track this story? I guess I gotta respectfully ask, are you guys okay with me just because I have no filter with like calling people out by name and like I'm pretty raw, but I'd have respect for people that don't want that on their channel. So I guess my question is, do you guys want me to put a filter on talking about specific people and things and sharing my experience as it is, or make sure it's not edited?
I think like maybe if you could try to avoid names, but if it's
Okay.
just has to be said, it has to be said. We're
Yeah.
doing things.
So, okay, I'll do my best. And then going back to what you were saying earlier, Scott, this will kind of segue into answering that question. But the reason I know that the coaching industry blew up in the pandemic was because that's when I got involved in it. And at that time, it was like 2020. Pandemic is, it was kind of already intact at that point for some time. And I have a construction company, and at that time, it was a couple years old, doing good. Next thing you know, I got introduced to an individual by book he wrote. It's this huge self-proclaimed billionaire guy that everybody knows. He's all over the place. And I started listening to this audio book, and like, it starts getting in my head. Just to be honest, like he really gets in my head with some of these sayings about like, and some of them are good sayings. Some of them are good and can be used for good, but I found out the deeper I went that they were being used for bad and for the agenda to serve them and had nothing to do with helping me. But thinking back on it now, there's sayings just like, commit first, figure out the rest later, invest in yourself, those who pay attention, network is your net worth, so on and so forth. We've all heard these sayings regurgitated in every single public speaking self-help room, right? But I had not heard those before. And so I was kind of a motivational entrepreneur already. And so it was kind of feeding me. And then I would hear him say things like, I'm not living my full potential. I'm, disappointing my family because I'm not aiming for higher goals. And like, this whole shaming through a book, this is all happening. And then, as the next year went by, I went to in-person events. I'm spending 18,000 here, 25,000 here, 40,000 here, 10 there, 5 there, working up to a couple $100,000 in buying stuff from this guy and becoming a business coach, a certified coach for him and everything. So over the span of a few years of me doing that, had a really crazy spiritual moment where I woke up, realized I was in a cult, voluntarily left that organization, said I don't want to be a part of it anymore. And then I started learning more about cults. I really didn't know much about cults and started learning more about cults, more specifically finding out this guy is actually one of the biggest contributors of Scientology and is a Scientologist. So I started learning about Scientology. So my mind was blown to find out that my mentor for the last few years is a cult, part of a huge cult, and I was part of a spinoff cult. So that's kind of how I got into it. I don't know if that answered your question or not, Scott.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Daniella has pointed out correctly that one of the tactics of a lot of these groups is what we call a thought-stopping cliche, and usually this is in response to a question. If somebody observes something that's going on, they're like, this looks a little suspect here. The leader or the organization spits out this diatribe that sounds nice, right, on the surface, but if you go right below the surface, they're not saying anything at all. And I think what you described, a lot of these positive affirmations, they work in the same way that thought-stopping cliches work, because you're sort of mesmerized at the moment, right? It resonates with you on some level, and you're like, yes, this person has the answer to all of my problems. But the fact of the matter remains, if you start thinking about it under scrutiny, these sayings fall apart rather quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
And, I want to take this time to just tell the audience about LGATs, large group awareness trainings. And it honestly probably would have been fine to say the name of who you were talking about, but I kind of love that you don't know. Like, in my head, it's anyone who ends in Oni Robbins, right? But like, there are so many of them. And this has actually been high drama in the cult world. High drama. Okay. So for decades, cult scholars have been saying, hey, these trainings, right? Large group awareness trainings, EST, Landmark, anything that ends in Oni Robbins, right? Where they are bringing you in and like kind of like weaponizing self-help. And they've been saying like this is shisty, right? Like these are cult tactics. And a lot of times I think it's like I don't care what you're saying. Like this is a cult tactic. It can be weaponized. It can be used for bad even if we haven't figured it out yet. So in 1995, Margaret Singer, who's one of the cult godmothers, right? Cult study godmothers, she writes a book and she writes about LGATs and how concerning they are. And she got sanctioned by the American Psychological Association for basically talking about this being concerning when you don't have the stuff to back it up. And like 100% we know that like the APA was wrong, right? Like we know now this, like exactly what you're saying, Ben, but the problem is here they still are, right? In 2020, right? So in 1995, it's being written about as like these are harming people, these are using tactics, right? Like she just writes about hyperventilation, and you just read about how these people use stuff like hyperventilation, getting you up and down, having you chant, things like bathroom control, right? You'll never be the same again. Like you'll see it all right there. But it was so like, really what I want to get to here is something that you said. You were like, it helped me. It spoke to me. Right. And because these trainings, they know what they're doing and they know how to be very heuristically effective. They know how to make you feel like something happened, like you went through something really profound. And you will, as you
Absolutely.
said, like commit your life, your money, your followership, all of this stuff. And the
Yeah,
last
it's
thing I just want to point out, which I know you know, but I'm sure they trashed you as soon as you woke up and said you didn't want to be a part, right?
they actually blocked me more than anything, and I was crazy because and I documented all that stuff and I keep it all up on my page so people can see it. But yeah, I was very professional, very polite, and just said, hey, I'd love to have a conversation with my mentor, my former mentor now, and just kind of just pick his brain on why he teaches people to do things this way, why he thinks it's okay to treat people this way, and just some simple questions like that. I was saying, I think that's the least you owe me. I've been pretty loyal. I spent lots of money, almost $250,000 with you guys. But yeah, what you were saying, Daniela, this whole thinking about the whole transcending of this, I thought after, because you got to realize it's been about a year and a half now. So I've had a lot of time to kind of learn about cults and learn about this stuff now. And I'm now more fascinated because, now that I'm trying to help people, I want to know how this is, in order to help somebody, I got to explain how it's happening, but thinking about my own experience just from a book, being able to incept my mind with thoughts and kind of be able to prey on my vulnerability got me to get closer to the organization. And then when I got in the organization and like at these events, there's just a lot of attractive energy. The whole, there's just a lot of rah going on. Everybody's, trying to be all positive and it's just very attractive. Let's put it that way. It's hard to say no in rooms like that to people. And that's when they start selling stuff to you, start throwing around free alcohol too. Like there's just so much that
And
goes
then
on.
and then later people come by with like, you should have said no. You'll appreciate that I'm ending my book with talking about how a Taylor Swift Eras Tour concert can be could be like in theory the perfect cult induction ceremony. Because like 100% everything you said, right? It's like that energy is so hard to explain if you haven't
Mm-hmm.
experienced, I think. But it's just so attractive to people that
Yeah.
don't know, I think, like how destructive it can be. And even so, it's a fun ride.
Yeah. Yeah. They create this whole facade that, and this is just one. Like I said, there's so many layers to this that I talk about, and I'm sure you guys do too as well. But the facade of this group and this community that you are now a part of being elite and high performance individuals, like above average, if you're not paying attention to yourself, you're not really like grounded, you're not in touch with your intuition and you're conscious to do the right thing, you'll get lost in that big time. You're
Yeah.
gonna have a hard time if you have a hard time saying no, which a lot of people unfortunately do. You're gonna really struggle in these environments, turning down offers and things that seem really, really attractive when it's presented to you in the right way.
Ben, you talked about waking up one day and sort of having this epiphany, but I imagine there were red flags along the way that now looking back upon reflection, you're able to see them. So, can you talk a little bit about maybe the epiphany that you had, what that looked like, and how that came about, and then maybe now where you're at looking back, if you would have been desirable to do so or in a position to do so, what were some of the red flags that you now see that you didn't see then?
Yeah. So the moment, it's really more, if I start talking about that too much, we're going to start going down a deep spiritual conversation. And I got to be careful when I do that because I don't want people thinking that I went from one cult to a religious cult. I'm not religious. I do believe in higher powers and things like that, but I'm not a religious person and I've never read the Bible nor that. So I guess I better just start by saying that. But some things happen to me. Let's just put it this way. Things are happening to me that have never happened to me in my entire 40 years of living. That's the best way I can explain it. Just like crazy things in my life that were kind of unexplainable. I was like, you just couldn't explain it. But thank God my daughter was here with me, friends, my girlfriend actually kind of witnessed some of this stuff with me. Otherwise, no one would ever believe it. But I just had some, I don't know, people call them downloads sometimes, people call them messages, whatever. I had like moments like that, if you will, to pay attention to certain things I had been ignoring for years. And those red flags that you're talking about, it literally was like, I've explained it in this way, where it's like my life flashing before my eyes. It was all the red flags I ignored all at once, right in front of me. It was just like I could like vividly remember all these moments I had ignored and felt off to me. And I always wondered if anybody else thought the same thing I did, or, but that's how it happened to me. It was literally so fast. All this stuff happened in probably a week when I woke up to making that decision of finally leaving. But
before we get to the red flags, and I want you to unpack that a little bit for us, but let's back up just a moment and talk about your disposition. What attracted you to the group? Where were you at personally? What was happening? Because in our conversations, obviously, a lot of these groups, whether they're religious or self-help, motivational type groups, they tend to identify and then prey on people who sometimes find themselves in a vulnerable position. As Daniella's pointed out, that's not always the case, but a lot of times these kinds of groups, especially if you think about the mission of a self-help, right? It's in the definition. You're reaching out to people who need help. So what did your life look like? And what was it about this group in particular that attracted you to it?
So another thing that got me was what I realized, what I call now, I don't know if it's a thing, but I call it this. I call it fake vulnerability. So a lot of these self-serving entrepreneurs are very good at kind of making it seem as though they're dropping their guard and kind of getting real vulnerable with you, so that you're going to now open up and you're now going to start trusting them, I think. And at least that's what it feels like to me after, like I said, after analyzing all this stuff and what I went through.
In case you want the star student, gold star, I call this hacking vulnerability. Yeah. After 22 years of studying this. Yeah.
So you know what I'm talking about then. Yes.
And this is one of the things that people have asked me afterwards. They say, but I don't understand. Like, they created such vulnerability, and I really needed that spoke to me. Right. And it's one of the reasons I say that you can't have good cults, right? Because you can't like hack human nature for good, I think. And one of the ways I've learned this was through being an author, and you maybe have this feeling by doing podcasts and sharing your stuff. But like, when I have to go into a book club, right, that is like chosen vulnerability. Like, I'm going in, everyone's read my life story, which is very intense, and I'm like laying myself open for the group. Right. And I believe that almost every cult asks you to do this all of the time. Right. But like the next day, I feel like I'm under that night. I feel like I'm high on people. It's a very enjoyable experience for me. And then the next day, I feel like I'm under concrete. And I know that now because I take the time to experience all of those feelings. And it's not like necessarily a good thing or a bad thing, right? Like, I've been talking about this today too. It's just a tool. Vulnerability is a tool of connection, right? But like, when you're using it, when you're doing it, like you said, like these guru types, or like, you don't know how to explain it, but they're faking it, right? And they're really like, and I feel the same way a lot of times. I'm like, this is how like we know when people are being vulnerable and like truly vulnerable, and we can connect to them. And then we know, I think, when there's kind of this veneer, but it's almost like they're doing vulnerability just a little bit better and a little bit shinier than everyone. And don't you want to be like that?
Right.
And one of the things I always say is like, and then cults absolutely do not care how much that vulnerability harms you. Right. So like, I do the book club and then I give myself time off afterwards. But like in a cult, I would just be doing that again the next morning.
Yeah. It's so I'm glad that it's funny, because I'm not a professional. I have not been studying this stuff for years. And this is just from me, just kind of transcribing my own experience and kind of putting some type of explanation to what I experienced and how everything happened. And so I think I'm doing a pretty good job, because that's what it felt like it happened. So to answer your question, Scott, That's one of the things that attracted me, was that fake vulnerability. This guy's talking about how his dad passed away when he was 10. My dad passed away, or not, he didn't pass away. He practically passed away. Left the family when I was 3, and I don't know my dad. So I kind of felt, not the same story, but still felt like growing up without a dad connection there. Just the whole blue collar worker growing up from that, like, so Daniella was saying, it's used for connection. And then when someone has ill intentions of using that connection for serving their own agenda, that's where it kind of gets really iffy. But that attracted me. And I can't remember where you wanted me to segue into the attraction, but there's a lot of things that attracted me, but that was one of it. Being part of fitting in with that community also. Yeah. We talked about that. That was definitely part of it. A lot of people don't admit that, but to be honest, that was an attraction.
Well, and that's a completely normal human reaction, right? We all want to fit in. We all want to feel like we belong to a group, to a community, and that's what these groups do. That's what these cult leaders do, is that they prey on a real human need. And then a lot of times, as I was listening to you and Daniella talk, what these folks do, right, is that they tell you what your problem is. And then, because most of us have never, been self-reflective enough to look into the depths of ourselves and think about what our problems, somebody comes along and they're charismatic and they appear to have everything together. And then they're able to look at you and articulate your feelings better than you can in the moment. And then to give you an opportunity, right, to become a part of a group where everyone has had this experience, that is a powerful appeal to everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's honest, and like you said, it's a natural biological thing, right?
Yeah. Well, and it's so interesting. I want to point out this feature of charisma and like double down on this thing of like, it's a tool. It's a tool and a skill that not everybody has, but that some people have, to be able to look at you and figure out what's bothering you and to be able to put it into words in ways you've never heard it before. And by the way, the reason they can usually do that is because they've been doing this for a long time. Right. But I do this, right? Like, I have the Swiftian ability of saying something in a way that nobody's ever said it before. And then when you hear it, you're like, yeah. And then I choose every day to not use that to manipulate people. So it's very like today I said that like cults hate gossip, right? Which turned into an argument of whether gossip was good or bad. And I'm like, no. Tools are gray, except maybe orange sometimes in the case of the president. Like, tools are gray, and how you use them is what matters. And this, I think, is what is fundamentally so hard about gurus. And I'm going to say this several times in the next 30 minutes. One of my favorite cult inoculation vaccines is from Dr. Yanya Lalich. And she just says, there are no gurus. Like, you do what you need to do for spirituality, for your life, but there are no gurus. End point. Period in between every word. None.
I agree. It is really all within us. And again, using another example of like how a good saying can be used for bad. Some of these people that say stuff like that as a leader don't actually mean that. They'll tell you things like that, like you have everything you need inside you, but then on the flip side, kind of suggest you to seek them for the answers and seek them for the success. And that answers your question, Scott. One of the red flags I've realized now after going through that is a huge red flag that I teach to people, is like, if you have a mentor or a coach, or you're looking for that, one of the ways you can tell if they're actually an ethical person is if they're encouraging you to think for yourself. If they're not doing that, and they're encouraging you to seek them for success, for a blueprint, for a playbook, that's a red flag.
Yeah. And here's a red flag that I don't think people think about sometimes. It's a red flag when they're pointing out red flags and then they don't point out the red flags about themselves. That's my best way to say it, right? I'm always saying, beware of people who know a lot about the bad guys, right? Like, that's how they learn to do it. They study other bad guys, right? And then people think it's a great gotcha question, right? They think, as though I don't do this for a living, they're the first person that has ever said this. And they just look at me and they go, oh, so we should be afraid of you? And I look them back and I'm like, with all due respect, yes. Yes, you should be afraid of me. And if I invite you to my compound, maybe don't come. Like, the energy is going to be great. Right? But like, and if I said, by the way, oh no, and I started explaining why, like, my version of no, I do know a lot about the bad guys, which means I would know how to do it. And I choose not to. And I
Yeah.
kind of believe in the journey of every cult leader and, like, what did you call them? Malevolent mentors, malicious mentors?
Oh, misguided mentors.
Misguided mentors. There you go. Malevolent, malicious, misguided. Oh my. Um, I think
I like malevolent too, though.
in every journey is like a charismatic person, right? Which everyone agrees means, like, there are things about you that you're just better at some things than other humans, and we don't know how to explain why. And at some point, they're like, how am I going to use this, right? Like, we can all think of a little Elon Musk marching along, being like, I'm better at some things than other people. And then at some point, like, I call it like sampling the Kool-Aid. They drink just enough to, like, actually start believing that they're the one that's going to be different. Like, they're the one that's going to do it better. They're the one that's going to, like, and then at some point they just go full supervillain. And I don't think they even think like for most of us, we need to think that we're the good guy and we need to, like, set up the world like that. But I think at some point, charismatic leaders have become deified in their own minds, and they're just like, I can do what I want, and now I want to test my power.
The most dangerous villain, right, is the one who thinks that they are the hero, and that presents all kinds of issues and problems. So, Ben, tell us a little bit about what you're doing these days and how you're endeavoring to take what you have learned and to help others get through that. What does that look like for you now going forward?
Well, not to come off as a hero or anything, but I'm just trying to help as much as I can. Obviously,
Yeah.
I've realized in reality, cults aren't going away. Misguided mentors aren't going away. The coaching industry space is just going to keep scaling. And so the only thing I can do is bring awareness, get loud about this stuff, talk about on my own pages, jump on podcasts like this. I think that me talking has a lot of weight behind it because I'm not just a spectator. I went through, even though I didn't go through a traditional cult like Scientology, I mean, the cult I went through technically it feels just like a spin-off Scientology cult. And so I don't help anybody, let's put it that way. And if that means I just keep doing what I'm doing, publicly speaking, finishing this third book that I'm working on, also going to be called Today's Misguided Mentors. I am a business consultant as well, but I stopped when I left grants, and because a lot of the videos that I put like in my coaching program, I'm not in alignment with anymore. And so, and also I'm out here calling out coaches and mentors and stuff like that. So there's like a bit of uncertainty about that, but I've been pretty vulnerable with people and transparent, asking people's advice and suggestions on, should I ever sell a course again? Are all courses bad? Stuff like that.
Well, you've come to the right place.
Well, would that be weird teaching, putting out courses to help people prepare for courses, or putting out courses to help people prepare for going into a networking space or a self-help space? I don't know.
Daniella, you're someone that does this in the public sphere. So talk a little bit about the tension maybe that you feel in this situation.
So first of all, I will give you my opinion about you for whatever it's worth, knowing you for 40 minutes,
Okay.
right? Like, you're on your journey. You're on your journey. And as long as you make sure, people always ask me, oh, so how do you not build a cult, right? And I'm like, okay, this is really important and really complicated, all right? You don't coerce and manipulate people and exploit their labor.
That's it.
Right. And I
Yep.
think so my personal experience with this, right? Because as soon as you said what you did, I was like, oh, I want to ask you how many times you've been called a cult leader. Right. Because you will. If it hasn't happened yet, it will. You'll be called a malevolent mentor, right? Like you'll get all of this stuff directed at you. And
Yeah.
in part, I believe that's because cult members or undeconstructed ex-cult members, like they haven't experienced non-deceptive sales. And so they don't understand, right? Like so I get accused of being a cult leader or a psychological operation yesterday. All the time, right? And it's like, no, I'm here, I'm using influence tactics and I'm selling, but I'm selling a product, my book, right? Which I went out and wrote the one I needed for my journey. And I think if you're on a similar journey, this product will help you. And if you get me money, you will get this product. And being popular. So for you, right? Selling courses, like being popular and giving people a product that is not deceptively sold or hooked or pimped or made to be something it's not, right? Like is not deceptive.
Okay, so
But
it sounds like we're in agreement with it. Yeah,
yes. And what I was going to say to you is I think the superpower, and I really think Uncultured did this in the realm of cult books, was showing that like as cult babies, like we have something else to teach you other than surviving trauma, which is group behavior, right? I see cults everywhere, right? And I feel like once you have been through a process of coercive control, right? You see it now. You see it
yeah,
now. It's just like I've spent 24 hours trying to explain to people why I know that text thread wasn't an accident, right? And it's because I know the internal language and I know that nobody ever wanted to be that embarrassed on purpose. Right? Like
right.
I am read into the secrets, right? So now you know the patterns of manipulation. Okay. So
100%. Yeah.
what I did when I realized that I would have to be on the internet being a personality if I wanted to get my ideas out and if I wanted to sell my book. And I was like, no, I don't like it. It's culty. So I went and I created the Guru Gotcha checklist, which of course, folks, we will link here. You can sign up on my website. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to give me your email. You're going to get my lists of culty things, these tools that I have created. I will also then probably use your email to let you know about Culting of America or other future products that I create, like a writing course, which I think might help you, right? Like, we're not being deceptive here. This is our lead funnel. That's what it's for. The Guru Gotcha checklist. It's a 20-part list. And I made it to keep myself in check. And people
Nice.
ask me, right? Like, are you worried about being a cult leader? No, because I'm not going to sample my Kool-Aid. I make sure that 25 to 50% of everything on my channel is from other people. I'm not the guru, right? And I'm not going to just decide to start manipulating and coercing people. So
Yeah.
I think like if this is how you're approaching it, right? Like you have stuff to teach because people haven't experienced that. And as you said, these con men are not going anywhere. They're going to keep targeting people and they only get better at it. But you have a tool, and surgeons are really good at cutting people up, but they're also really good at cutting people up. So it's really like, how much do you believe in not being a guru? And now take that and do good things with your knowledge.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. And I really think that I needed to hear that from your perspective because it sounds like you literally went through a lot of the thought processes that I went through over the last several months is in the hesitancy of being labeled a whatever, a wannabe. To answer your question, Scott, I get all kinds of accusations of me being a coaching scammer too. And I haven't even sold any coaching for a year and a half since I left. Even me never have sold anything in the last year and a half. Even me jumping on my page and saying I'm giving out refunds if I ever manipulated you into a sale and you bought something from me that I felt like I forced you to, reach out to me. I'm giving you your money back. And I did all kinds of stuff like that just to try to really let people know that like this is a shift and a commitment I'm making and I'm not that person anymore. But you said something I don't want to forget to bring up, Daniella. You said a lot of ex-cult members don't understand deceptive selling, I think, something like that.
No,
Um,
non-deceptive sales.
non-deceptive sales. Yeah. So I have a unique introduction into the cults because, like I said, if you remember, I had already had a company for a couple years doing successful. And I went into it literally just trying to do a good job, give them a good experience, trying to just brand awareness in the local community. I was just literally trying to just do like grassroots, honest work. I wasn't chasing money. It was only when I got hooked up with my mentor and then started going down that path that I slowly started adopting his thought process and his sales tactics, which are deception, manipulation, shaming, interrogating, harassing, bullying, all that stuff into getting sales. And I really didn't even realize that I was kind of doing that, but I was training under him. And so I thought, hey, he's this multi-billionaire, proclaimed multi-billionaire. If I want to achieve that kind of level, I guess maybe he knows something. I should just do it. So over the years, I started kind of indoctrinating his sales process. So yes, I still made sales. Yes, I still did good in my company. The problem was it didn't feel good. These sales hours I was making felt really slimy and bad and unethical because I was now using like NLP tactics to kind of really manipulate this situation. And so now when I left that organization, I had to go back to being myself and deconstructing all that unethical ways I just was taught now for several years. So it's been a roller coaster, but I do know what ethical sales looks like, thankfully.
Yeah, and if you don't know, or listeners don't know, this is called a pseudo personality, by the way. And like, even if nothing else you said had been culty, the fact that you feel like you have to go back to a different person than you were, like, that is a true cult experience, right? And you have to take off the cult persona. And sometimes people think you're going back to who you were, but of course you're not, because you have now been changed forever by your encounter with a cult. And you have to like figure out now who you are. And so when I said to you, right, like you're on your journey, like you said you've been at it
Yeah,
for a year and a half, so the
that's not very
decade
long. Yeah.
the decade of deconstruction I have named so for a reason. But like, when people come out of cults or high control groups and say they want to help other people, like, I think that's beautiful. And I think that like being authentic, something that you said really stuck with me. It's like you don't actually have to study all of this. If you just really authentically tell your story, everyone else who's been under coercive control is going to relate to it.
Yeah.
Like, that's the concept that I wrote Uncultured with. Like, I was literally told, Daniella, there's no market for your stories because people can't relate to growing up in a cult or being a woman at war. But like, everyone can relate to being scared and wishing they were somewhere else, and having group pressures pressing down on them. And like, if it works, if it's valid, it stands up to scrutiny, right? So if you are like validly telling a story of how you were manipulated, I think one of the things is we all think other people aren't going to get it and we're going to look so stupid. And like, in reality, that's what gives you the validity and that's what gives you the vulnerability, is like, because I can tell from talking to you that you've experienced coercive control and now you're trying to unbraid it and help other people not experience it. Like, that's not deceptive. Whatever phase you're at in your journey, you're just at that phase.
Yeah. I love that. I'm looking forward to all the phases, and I can see this just getting better and better. There's a lot of plans for this, and yeah, it for the long when I first left and transitioned, there was a lot of people that thought I was crazy, thought it was a phase. Like a lot of people called me like, "Are you okay, man?" Like, I used to, see you doing this and this and this, and then overnight you're like totally over here now. I was like, I've never been better in my life, man. But I had a lot of phone calls like that.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah, and
getting free is great and also really hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
because in addition to what you gave up while you were in the group, we've talked about this on our program. There are exit costs, right? To to leaving a cult that people don't consider. But on the other side of that, not only are you deconstructing and going through this process of rediscovering who you are, your authentic self, but you're also having to endure, as well-meaning as they might have been, being blocked or being called and saying, "Are you sure you're okay? Everything okay?" And I imagine that there were people in this particular group that you were close to, that you miss those relationships, right? And all of us experience that when we leave these particular high control groups. And Daniela put words to that, the idea of the high exit cost on your way out.
Yeah, thinking about the exit cost. Oh gosh, I don't know. The exit cost for me was, there's some decisions that went into that were a huge cost. For instance, me pretty much collapsing my construction company and then moving across the entire country to get closer to my mentor right before I left was a huge cost, obviously. Uprooted my family and did all that stuff. And then, so now I'm, in a different state and trying to figure out, well, now what do I do? So there's a huge cost. And as far as relationships go, from former colleagues that are in that organization still, a lot of them just kind of ghosted me too. If you're not familiar, the whole suppressive person thing, it's very real, and it's not even in Scientology. It's just in those type of self-help atmospheres and organizations. They really try to push that, like, if someone's not on your frequency, they're not for you, cut them out of your life, all that stuff. And very terrible message to put to people. I mean, I ended up cutting out some really good people in my life that I care about.
I always like to stress, and this is on the Guru Gotcha checklist, right? Like, talking bad about people who have left or telling you not to talk to people. Like, no valid organization and no valid leader has a reason to tell you not to talk to anybody.
Right.
Like why? Right? Oh, they're disgruntled. Okay, why? Right? Like, a valid organization can understand that experiences vary. And so some
A
people will
professional
have
one
good
too.
experiences, right? Yeah. By far and large, as an officer in the Army, my soldiers liked me. But you can find people that will talk about me, right? Because we're all humans and experiences vary. And it's like so not legit to just, like, in any way to talk about, right? To have like a professional critique with something someone did. Yes, absolutely. Right. But just be like, oh, because you're not part of our organization anymore. Like, we're not going to talk to you. Like, that to me is so shady.
Yeah. And those type of things were happening that you explained, where the higher ups were actually reaching out to some of these former colleagues of mine and kind of giving them the third degree about following my content and liking my content and stuff like that. And they're like, yeah, the reason you're doing that. And I guess they were trying to suggest to them that they should disconnect from me or whatever they're trying to say. So they're very well aware of me. They haven't really tried suing me or anything, but I don't really care. Like, I got a bigger purpose here. They haven't been able to put fear in me yet. They've been able to do it to a lot of big names with like $100 million lawsuit type things attached to it. So that tells you the type of power that Scientology is attached to, when they can get someone to go into a corner, on a big lawsuit like that. So anyways, that's a separate topic. But
Ben, we have a few minutes left here, and I want to, if you could speak to your younger self, right? If you could speak to yourself before you got caught up in this particular group, what would you say to that person? Because I think by extension, right, it's very helpful, because as you mentioned, this self-help industry continues, and a lot of people get caught up in it because I think at our core, we all want community. And if we're being honest, right, we want to be better off as a person, however you measure that. And these particular groups prey on those vulnerabilities and on those very normal human desires. So if you could go back and maybe give yourself a warning as you were being kind of courted to come into this group, what would you say?
I would keep it very basic. I like to keep, when it comes to this topic, and we're talking about advice on someone navigating this, keeping it basic, I feel like is very helpful. And so for me, the advice would be, hey, I know you've heard this before. This might sound cheesy, but like, you have everything that you need inside of you. You need all the tools you've ever wanted. They're all inside of you. There's going to be people throughout your life that are going to try to suggest to you that you're missing something, that you're short on something, that you're lacking, that you have potential that you're not reaching. And I just want to let you know that all that stuff is going to come to you in due time. All the stuff, you don't need to chase money, ego, self-pride, let go of all that stuff, and all the stuff you could have ever wanted is going to gravitate towards you naturally. If you just focus on helping people, caring about people, and forming genuine relationships. I would say a lot more than that, but that's just the tip of the iceberg, man.
No, that was so good. And I just want to give everyone a reminder, like, it's okay to just be. And when you're in a space of personal transformation, predators will show up. And it actually cost me a lot of money in therapy to have somebody tell me, Daniella, you're addicted to self-help. And like, it's okay to just be, right? It's okay to want to be better, but like, you don't have to be in an abusive relationship with your body all the time. You don't have to be in an abusive relationship with your mind all the time or with your finances, right? Like, you can just be a person and not be obsessed with bettering yourself all the time. And that's okay. And I think giving ourselves that okay, right? Like, we're all three of us are the type of people that are always going to be working on ourselves. Like, we don't probably need as much help with that as we think, right? So just like giving yourself the permission. I like to tell people, like, it's okay for your new mission to be you.
I like that.
Yeah, and that's well said. And it goes to the heart, Ben, of what you've been talking here, is that a lot of times the things that we're looking for, we already have and we already possess. But what these gurus do is they identify problems and then they offer you a solution. And they may even say, as you articulated earlier, hey, you've got everything you need. Now, let me give you my book here for $19.95, right? So you've got everything you need in addition to my book, in addition to my leadership. And so, when you hear those conflicting messages, that's a huge, huge red flag. So Ben, if folks want to find you, if they want to follow you, if they want to benefit from your story or what you're doing now, what's the best way to do that?
Follow my YouTube channel. It's called Today's Misguided Mentors. And then the second most active channel would be my Instagram. It's Benjamin John MIC. And those are, you can stay up to date on what I'm doing and what I'm up to on those two pages. And usually I'll kind of disperse that on everything I'm doing. So you'll know what I'm doing one way or another. But I forgot to tell you, Scott, the to bring all that message back home.
Yeah.
I would say this to myself, like, if it feels bad, it's probably bad. If it feels good, lean into that energy. I would make it that stupid simple.
Yeah, well said. And we will make sure that we have all of your information in the show notes. So check that out. A big shout out to our wonderful producer, Haley, who does a tremendous job on producing our program. Ben, thank you so much. I feel like we just scratched the surface, so to speak. So hopefully in the future, we can have you back and continue the story. And Daniella said it right. We're all on a journey, right? And we're all making progress at different speeds, but we're human beings, and that's enough.
Absolutely.
And look, I finished what I was making, so you all get to see it. I took a scarf. This one I did my TED Talk in very early on my journey, and I added sleeves.
Nice.
Now,
very nice.
It's what we call a love again.
Oh, and Daniella, I saw that you started a new TikTok that is devoted only to knitting and things of that nature. Did I not see that? Did I see that wrong?
I tried to have one that was only going to be knitting to see if they would not kick me off. But then at one point I was suspended. And so cults got onto the knitting channel and now it will never be undone. So
they're one and the same now.
So,
There
so,
is a
so,
channel called Knitting Cult Ladies Closet, and that one is where I post more of my stuff. But you see, the problem is the least interesting thing about my videos is the knitting. So anytime I do a video that's just knitting content, it gets suppressed by, the cult videos or the politic videos. So just
wow, nice.
it's a
Good to
hard
know.
life. But
Absolutely. Yeah.
here on YouTube, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see a lot of all of the videos. So, we use the tools that we have. Thank you so much, Ben. Keep us posted on the book too, because I'm building pretty good channels for non-deceptive book sales.
Okay.
So
Nice.
we'll stay connected.
I love it. I appreciate you guys, Daniela and Scott. It was a pleasure meeting you guys and having a good conversation. And yeah, we'll have to do this again.
Thank you so much, Ben. And something that Daniela said, I think, is going to be my new sign off on cults and the culting of America. We're all humans and experiences vary. So keep that in mind. I like that. I like that a lot. Thanks so much for tuning in. Be sure and like the channel, subscribe, share with your friends, leave us a review that helps the algorithm, helps get the information out about this podcast. We appreciate all of you so much. Until next time, I'm Scot Loyd for Daniella Mestyanek Young. We'll see you on the next episode of Cults and the Culting of America.